you guys for joining us with The Real Virtual Show. I am your host, Malia Probst, and today we are joined by Steve Dann out of the UK. Steve, thank you for joining us.
Hi, nice to be. Thanks for inviting me.
I appreciate you being here. So you have been very involved on the business side of virtual reality as well as augmented reality. We're going to dig into that and the numerous companies you have started in the space. But let's start really broad. What is virtual reality, Steve, and why should we care about it?
That's a very good question to start off with, Malia. Well, virtual reality is basically it's immersing you in a new reality, a different reality, and that could be something that might be filmed in 360 degrees, or it could be something that's completely recreated using CGI, or taking part of a game or a Sims or something like that. But it's what I tend to look at as totally immersive, and that's the difference between VR and AR. Whereas AR is actually sort of changing something, changing your look on reality as it actually happens. So you're seeing reality, but we're adding things to it. In virtual reality, we're totally taking you to a different place.
So you would say everyone kind of has different definitions for these terms, and I kind of like asking people what their definition of these terms are, because this technology has been around for a long time. It's been cooking since the 60s.
Yeah.
But as this is becoming an emerging consumer market, the language that's evolving around it is just that, still evolving. So thank you for kind of covering the differences between those definitions, because I think those are terms that we're hearing a lot in the news, and perhaps not everyone is sure exactly what they mean. So thank you for unpacking those a little bit. So we're gonna delve into the medical and retail possibilities of AR and VR, and we're gonna dig into some of your numerous endeavors in space. It's quite impressive, the number of virtual and augmented businesses you have going on. But first, what are some other industries or some other spaces that are going to be revolutionized by augmented and virtual reality? What are you really looking forward to?
I think that virtual reality actually fits into lots and lots of different sectors. It'll be different things to each sector. It won't be the same for everything. So whether it's experiences, gaming, entertainment, retail, military, medical, literally, I suppose you could probably really strip it down. I've probably counted up to about sort of 20 different areas if you're taking training and then education and things like that. And it's going to be useful and important in a lot of those areas. But it'll be slightly different in each of those areas because it will deliver something different in each of those different areas.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the millions of use cases that are coming out. And when I'm looking around the space and I'm seeing all of these analysts and all of these kind of business consultancies that are emerging from this, a lot of them say the same thing, which is people will approach them with, how do I pivot my business to utilize this technology? How do I take advantage of this technology to set my business, my great idea, apart from everything else? And I think we're going to see some incredible use case scenarios come out very, very quickly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a sort of like that you say that as you say, I've got quite a few companies in this space now, but it came out of my main company, which is called Amplified Robot. And the idea with that is because we do actually we work for a lot of different people, and we do a lot of white label VR and AR work. And we did that because we wanted to try lots of different things. So I have lots of clients in lots of different areas, and they all give us lots of very interesting problems to solve. And yeah, it's fascinating because, as you touched on there, virtual reality is something that it's been around since the 60s. It probably came to sort of fruition initially around about 25 years ago in the late 80s and early 90s. but unfortunately the technology wasn't up to everybody's imagination. Whereas now, thank goodness, the technology is sort of keeping pace with people's imagination and what they can do. So I was around the first time it was there in a small way, because my background's in film and television special effects and doing sort of CGI animation and things like that. And that's taken us into gaming and apps, and then took us very naturally into augmented reality. But in actual fact, that was something that got sprung out of sort of nowhere about 9 years ago. One of my clients asked me if I knew anything about augmented reality. And at that time, I have to say, I hadn't heard of it at all. But I sort of delved into it and found that, oh, this is really interesting. And it's wasn't that different from what we were doing, except that we were doing special effects, but they had to be working in real time, rather than something that was special effects for film or television. So I thought, oh, this is great. And the more I got into it, it took me a long time to actually get my head around what it was doing and what you could do with it. And probably I'm still learning as to what you can do with augmented reality and virtual reality, because with virtual reality, you have to throw away the rule book in terms of, if I was to approach it in the same way I'd approach a film or a TV commercial or a program and try and structure it in the same way, it just wouldn't work. So the last sort of 120 years worth of people inventing film and the way that film's shot and presented, you just got to throw that away and start again. And it's really exciting because of that, but it means that it gives us a lot of interesting challenges, but we're sort of going one sort of small step at a time, and everybody's helping everybody else to try and find out what to do and the best way to do it.
Yeah, I kind of find, I'm located here in Los Angeles, so there's a lot of activity and a lot of engagement in the entertainment space. There's a lot of interest in the entertainment space, obviously, for virtual reality, because it's LA. And I love how we have really had to go back to the roots of performance to know how to tell a story in this new emerging space. And you really kind of have to go back more to theater and go to stage direction, as opposed, because you can't cut and the camera shows everything. There's no director's chair behind the camera. We can see you.
Absolutely. No, you hit the nail right on the head. In fact, that's one of the things I was going to mention. It is actually owes a lot more to a theatre experience right now than anything else. Although I think it's going to be interesting to see how it progresses, because again, exactly in the same way as sort of film progressed from static cameras with only being able to shoot sort of 4 or 5 minutes worth of footage at any one time, and they had to invent close-ups and medium shots and cutaways and things like that, and that was something that evolved in exactly the same way as sort of audiences were completely mesmerized by just seeing the shot of a train coming into a railway station in the cinema. That was amazing in black and white. And they thought, the sort of the story about the first time they showed one of those films in Paris, where the first 2 rows of the audience got up and ran out of the cinema because they thought the train was actually coming into the cinema. And we're virtually in the same sort of area in virtual reality, because to be quite honest, at the moment, I think people, because it's so new, people just get a completely, oh my goodness, a factor. You can show them just about anything in virtual reality if they haven't seen it before. But it's going to be interesting to see how quickly they become more demanding or bored with the way that people are doing things, and we're going to have to think up new and different ways of actually presenting virtual reality.
Oh yes, our saturation with media will absolutely be applicable in this space as well. I think that our appetites, exactly like you said, like right now we're in that wow phase. We're in that, oh my God, this is mind-blowing phase. We think that the train's going to run us over phase. And I think that we're going to become fairly jaded fairly quickly as more and more of us get our hands on this technology and bring it into our homes.
That's the thing. I think it's also going to be interesting from the point of view of, I know that obviously YouTube is sort of going gangbusters on virtual reality, but I don't think in actual fact that an awful lot of sort of in-home sort of virtual reality is going to make it. Because I think it's, at the moment, a lot of the things that you can't do, very difficult to move the camera, and you certainly don't what I call wobbly vision. It's a sort of handheld stuff is not going to be very good at the moment. So I think that there's going to be a lot of that when people sort of try it out. But I think that it requires an awful lot of discipline. And an awful lot of discipline for actually, if you've got actors or people appearing inside your 360 video, it requires a lot of discipline for them, and actually makes life must be 10 times more difficult because they're acting to something totally in the round.
Yeah, I actually did my first 360-degree video shoot last weekend. And we used a GoPro rig, and, it's not like it was brain surgery. It wasn't rocket science, but the amount of diligence that you have to have and the amount of attention to detail to get all of those little GoPros all synced up perfectly together. And then there are so many little details that you have to worry about that you wouldn't necessarily have to worry about with a traditional camera. And the syncing was like, wow, we have to come up with something better than this. So I'm looking forward to some of the camera hardware that has to be coming out within the next year that's going to be more affordable than that $60,000 Nokia Ozo price point.
Absolutely. Well, you could go for $200,000 for a red setup as well if you wanted to.
Right. I'm going to be honest, Steve. It's a bit out of my price range. I can't. Maybe next week. So you're the founder of the Augmenting Reality Meetup group in London, and you're very, very plugged in to the virtual reality community, to the augmented reality community in a global sense as well. Could you tell us about some of the changes and some of the growth that you've seen over the past couple of years?
So we started augmenting reality in London about just over 3 years ago. And I have to hold up my hand and actually say that I completely ripped off the idea from Ori Imbar at ARMY because I saw what he was doing there. And I think he was doing we were having the same problem at that time in London, where people were hearing about augmented reality and a little bit about virtual reality, but there wasn't a place where we could actually get together and actually talk about it properly. So nobody was doing it. So I decided that we'd get in there. I get in there because I'm really passionate about sort of AR and VR. And so I thought, well, let's start a meetup group and see how it goes. And now we've got about just over 2,100 members now, and we normally get about 150 people turning up to the meetups, and they're held once a month. So the actual sort of growth in interest has started off. I can remember sort of one of our first one or two meetups. We probably, after the first one, which was really well attended, although I don't know if that was because we had pizza and beer as well.
Never hurts.
Yeah, it never hurts. And it's a sort of that, I think that afterwards we sort of, we probably got down to a sort of hardcore of around about sort of 15 people. But as I say, now we get 10 times that amount. So it was all about sort of us finding out about things, because it's also a discipline doing it once a month and actually trying to find new people to present things and also to talk about things. So it was a great way of finding out what was happening around the world and getting people from around the world to actually sort of come and talk, even if it's only via Skype, about what they're doing. It's really exciting. I think that also the people's awareness has got a lot better. When I first started in AR, say just over 9 years ago, although we were working for a number of very, very clued up clients, apart from that, it was very difficult to try and get other people interested in it. because they just didn't understand it. I think in actual fact, it's probably a little bit easier to understand virtual reality. Once you see it, you totally get it. And so that's been a little bit easier. And I think that's why sort of virtual reality is going to be quicker in adoption, because the actual sort of delivery mediums for it are pretty well in place right now. So I think that's going to make virtual reality really hot right now. But in another sort of 2 or 3 years' time, there's going to be some really great stuff that'll push augmented reality to the fore. And then augmented reality or take off. But we're talking about a big market for both those areas. So it's we're talking markets that have gone from nothing, literally in VR, sort of 2.5 years ago, to something sort of approaching 5 billion in the next couple of years. And augmented reality in the next 10 years is going to be sort of probably about 10. Probably 15 times more than that. And that's only because augmented reality is going to become part of everybody's life. Whereas virtual reality, by its own thing, it's a very immersive and it's a very personal thing, which by and large you would experience by yourself. Whereas augmented reality, you can actually utilize when you're in a room full of people and still talking to them.
Yeah, the entertainment and gaming applications of virtual reality are definitely wed for augmented reality to really take off. I agree with you that it's going to be a much bigger industry than virtual reality eventually.
Eventually, absolutely. And I think that we're just about beginning to see some of those things, because I believe every time we were able to do something new in augmented reality space, when we started off, it was using very big computers, specialist camera rigs and things like that. Then we were able to use laptops, and then tablets and smartphones came along, and that enabled us to do more with augmented reality. But we're very much waiting for a wearable device which actually does augmented reality really well. And then as soon as that's in place, then it will start to take off as well. And I'm just beginning to see a couple of devices like the ODG glasses coming out, and sort of I think that's actually going to be a big sort of push forward into AR. And I know they're showing something at CES in January. So I've seen some of the stuff because we're looking at working with them in the new year on some of our medical stuff, and it's really exciting about what they're doing. And I think that they seem to be pretty much further ahead than anybody else, because I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but that brings us into the sort of HoloLens style type of place. And it's interesting to note that in actual fact, ODG actually sold a whole lot of patents to Microsoft, which actually formed the basis of HoloLens. So the ODG glasses were originally designed for military use. You can buy them now. They're really cool, but they're very expensive. They're around about sort of, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a pair. So it's just for sort of specialist areas right now. But one of the things they're working towards doing is to actually sort of create much more cost-effective consumer usage ones. And I think that's actually going to be another big boost to what's going to happen in AR. And of course, the other great thing about it is that they actually can convert into virtual reality glasses as well, headsets. So it's going to be something that you could do both. And they don't look too bad. They still look a little bit like Elvis Presley sunglasses, if you know what I mean. Sort of really big and chunky. But they're pretty good, and they're sort of pretty lightweight, considering all the things that they've got going on inside the frames and everything.
Yeah, I just dropped the link to their to the site there in the chat, and I pulled it up. And you're right, they do look a little bit like Elvis Presley sunglasses. That's great. But I see it as a humidity sensor, altitude sensor, magnetometer, gyroscope, accelerometer. Oh yeah. Oh, they got a lot of bells and whistles on this. Absolutely. Audio ports with earbuds. These look great.
Yeah, no, they're cool, and there's a sort of like there's so much stuff in there that you don't need all that for a sort of consumer version, but also they're very robustly made, so you can sort of drop them on the floor and kick them around, and they'll still survive. And of course, it's got everything there that a mobile phone's got in as well. So yeah, they're for my money at the moment the best head-mounted display for AR. There are other companies like Athea, Meta, and obviously Microsoft with HoloLens. And then, of course, there might be Magic Leap, but don't get me started on Magic Leap.
That's the Pandora's box question, it sounds like.
It is. I mean, it's something that I hope they can do it. I mean, I think that they can they can definitely create something that works really well with inside the lab, and also can actually work very well on sort of something that's big and very clunky. It's just how quick and how fast, and can they actually sort of get that down into something, because eventually they're going to have to get it down into the same size glasses as ODG. So they've got a long way to go for that, and I reckon they're probably talking about 5 years before they get to that stage. But if they get it right, then that's as everybody says, that could be a game changer, because they're using totally different techniques to add the images into your eyes. They're really putting the images right in your eyeball, into the retina.
That's what makes this space so exciting, is that nobody knows what's going to happen. Nobody knows what's going to happen. And the Microsoft HoloLens is viewed by some to be the horse that might win the consumer AR headset race.
Yeah.
And it's still a couple of years off. They actually recently opened up a demo to developers. I think they opened up last week, and no, it's not open to consumers. So consumers were not allowed to go see this. But it seemed like the main issue when I was reading some reviews about the product, a few of the issues seemed to be that there was a limited field of view with the HoloLens. And also, FYI, people, they're actually opening up this to developers for the next couple of months, and it's hololensevents.com. So if anyone is a developer, FYI, I might want to apply, because that is important stuff. And I think the developer edition is going to be shipping next year for about $3,000. But coming back to that limited field of view, what is field of view? What is FOV? And why is it so important to mediated reality? Why is it so important to augmented reality? What does it mean?
It's quite difficult to explain. It's something, when you see it, you know it. So if you had the headset on, it'd be quite difficult to understand it. But essentially, what the field of view is actually what you can see, whether that's through a camera, whether that's through binoculars, or even glasses. And that when HoloLens was first announced, it looked as though they were actually going to have quite a wide sort of field of view, and the field of view is sort of comes out from your eyes and goes in that direction. And of course, the wider the field of view, the better it is, because that means you can put an awful lot more things actually within the scene that you're looking at. The narrower the field of view means that the augmented reality overlay is only going to a very small specific area of what you're looking at, which will be centered around the center of what you're looking at, and only sort of spread out around about sort of 13 degrees. Whereas if you think you're actually you're normally looking at over 90 degrees with your normal vision. So that's actually quite a narrow field of view within inside your normal field of view. That's why the field of view has become such a contentious issue with what they're trying to do, and it's something that people in augmented reality and overlay sort of technology have struggled with quite a lot, because it's a difficult piece of technology to get over, partly because the wider the field of view, it's not just the optics that are involved, it's also the electronics that are involved to actually sort of get the image of a bigger field of view imagery in front of you. So that actually gives you an awful lot of lot more problems. It's not just the visual opticals, it's also the other problems in electronics and the amount of sort of grunt work that your headset has to do. Now, some people are actually sort of getting over that, or trying to get over that, by having a sort of a little pack which you wear on your belt, a bit like the old Walkman. I don't know if you remember those, when you sort of clipped on your belt, that type of thing. And that would be actually tethered onto the glasses. At the moment, I think the HoloLens is trying to do everything with inside the glasses, which is more or less what ODG are trying to do. And I think if they can do that, that's great, because any type of tethering gets in the way. So if you can get that out of the way, that's good. So that, of course, I have to admire Microsoft, because at least they put it out there and they've shown it, and they are going to give it to developers. So they're not hiding behind anything. They're not sort of trying to do anything sort of tricksy, and give out lots of fantastic sort of videos, which actually probably don't bear that much relationship to how the final product's going to be. And I think that they have to realize that they can't have another sort of stumble like they had really with the, sort of the Kinect, which I think didn't go quite as well for them as they thought it was going to do, because they overpromised and underdelivered. And I think that you can never do that in this business, especially when you're trying to get people to sort of buy into new technology. It's better to underpromise and overdeliver if you can.
Absolutely. I 3 cheers for that in every aspect of everything. Always undersell and overdeliver, but applied to this technology. Absolutely. Absolutely. We have a very limited patience for new, expensive technology that has a lot of hype.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
Exactly. That's exactly what's spot on.
Limited patience. Yeah. So you have a lot of businesses going on in the virtual and augmented reality spaces. You have Amplified Robot, you have iRewards. I want to kind of delve into medical realities. Congratulations, by the way, on winning the best use in the London Tech Expo a couple months ago.
That's great. Thank you so much. Yeah, we're really proud to get that award. And I think the medical reality is something that's very close to my heart about what we're trying to do. And it's something that as with all the other companies, the extra companies that I started off, have come out of ideas that we had when working for the sort of white label things that we've been doing for other clients over the years. And I actually saw some work that a doctor is doing over here. He's a training surgeon, so he trains surgeons and doctors, and he was actually using Google Glass to, in actual fact, get over what he could do in training, because training of surgeons hasn't really changed for about the last 200 years. It's very, very similar to it was. A doctor or a surgeon from 20 years ago would be sort of pretty much at home in how they're trained, because it literally is standing by a surgeon watching people work and looking over their shoulder, if you can actually do that, and then practicing on cadavers or simulated people. That hasn't changed. The problem is that right now the world needs more surgeons. It just hasn't got enough surgeons to actually do all the procedures that are required right now. So when I saw what Shafi was doing, and he actually did a live broadcast using Google Glass to over 13,500 students from around the world, which was quite something. And he also was actually getting tweets back into the Google Glass as he was doing the operation. Now, obviously, they actually were getting so many tweets in, they had to have lots of people moderating. So but he was actually sort of talking through what the operation and how he was doing it, but also answering specific questions. And we thought, hang on, this is really good. But Google Glass only sort of takes you so far. Why don't we sort of take it out and sort of broaden it up and use virtual reality to start to be able to train doctors and surgeons? And so that I met him eventually about just over a year ago, and we started talking about what we could do. And we filmed our first operation in 360-degree virtual reality in February of this year. And that sort of proved the point of what it's going to work. And people say, well, why shoot it in 360? Well, I've mentioned before that 360-degree and virtual reality is a very immersive thing, because it actually transports you somewhere else. You put the headset on, and if it's done correctly, you're transported to something else. And so you start to forget exactly where you are, and you buy totally where you are virtually. And of course, surgeons have to be, although they're the sort of quarterback or the centre forward of the team, they are very much part of a team. So although they're doing the surgery, they also have to interact with everybody else standing around them, around the operating table, whether that's the nurses or the other doctors or the anaesthetists, for instance. So it's very much something that is not just, you don't perform the surgery in isolation. So virtual reality was a great way of getting this over, that in actual fact, you are part of a team. And when you put the headset on, you are looking around and seeing exactly what's going on, not only from the surgeon's point of view, but from the nurse's point of view, or from the anaesthetist's point of view. And we've started to refine that. And now we've actually started to put together sort of complete training modules, because we see this as being a very interactive way of teaching people, because we have lots of overlays with CGI animation, but also additional things that you might want to know about when you're training to be a doctor and a surgeon. Because over here, even general practitioners actually have to do 2 years worth of training in surgery. And for somebody who actually wants to specialize in something in surgery, that's a 7-year training period. That's an awful lot of training that you have to sort of get done. And actually, it's very, very expensive to do that, because it's very expensive to actually get into operations. It's very expensive to actually sort of train yourself using cadavers or sim cadavers that people use. But it's very, very difficult. You know, it's once you've taken out the appendix of a cadaver, you can't put it back in again and let somebody else try it. So exactly. So we want to do something which is completely, you know, you can go over it and over it again, but it's also multi-layered, so that you can actually go into different parts of the operation. You can actually find out a bit of the background of what happens before the operation takes place, and also what happens after the operation takes place. So the great thing about it is that Shafi actually, as I say, is a training surgeon. He has 200 students under his wing. So they're our guinea pigs. So that we ask them, are we doing the right thing? Are we going in the right direction? What else would they like to try and see? So it's very much work in progress, but we're really excited about the way it's going. It's showing a lot of promise.
So medical realities helps the training of surgeons. It helps the training. It sounds like this could be applied and used for nurses as well, not just surgeons. It seems like this could be something that could pertain to everyone in the healthcare industry.
Absolutely. Yeah.
On the skills transference that is so vibrant with the use of this technology, we can really learn how to do things because the experience is so immersive. We can really get in there and really experience it. And we've never had this kind of technology before. So the potential for more real education and the experiential forms of education is mind-blowing to me. On the flip side, out of the training side, how do you see medical technology helping patients on the patient side of things?
That's a very good question, because I think you're absolutely spot on with everything you just said. And I think with patients, I think that again, it can go in, it can help in a lot of different ways. And whether that's actually sort of training patients about actually perhaps what they should be doing, and perhaps they're not, because I think that I've just read something today where I saw somebody was saying that sort of 71% of people actually know what they should be doing to become fitter and healthier, but actually only 41% of those people are actually doing something about it. So the rest are going, yeah, we know about it. But
those are probably UK numbers. In the US, it's much lower, I'm sure.
And so something like virtual reality and augmented reality to a degree, I think, can actually sort of start to help in those areas, to help motivate people, to help train people up as well, because I think you could do sort of virtual reality training regimes and things like that. I think that's the sort of start of where people can actually sort of get a handle on how this new technology can work, and work in that specifically in that sort of area. Now, of course, you can go on to use virtual reality perhaps to help with Alzheimer's or phobias and things like that, because with virtual reality, you can get people to experience things that might be dangerous or might put them in harm's way normally, but of course it won't do, because it's virtual, it's not real. Although your mind and your brain starts very quickly to, if it's done properly, to actually totally take on the fact that, hey, this looks pretty real to me, I'm going to buy into it. Because I think that over 70% of what your brain thinks of is real, is what you're seeing through your eyes. And then you add the audio to that, an immersive audio to go with the immersive video, and then you've got a complete package. And it's very easy, I think, to get people to buy into something, so they can really believe that they're doing something or experiencing something. So that works well with phobias, but also it could work well with training, could work well with being incentivized. I was sort of playing around with an idea, in actual fact, of actually to motivate people was to actually sort of get avatars of yourself, and then see what happened if you didn't do this, or you ate 10 cream buns every day for the next 5 years. Because, so you put weight on, sort of very slowly and you don't notice it. But if you had a way of actually all of a sudden jumping ahead 5 years and saying, right, if you continue on the lifestyle you've got right now, this is what you're going to look like in 5 years' time, perhaps that actually might be enough of a sort of shock where people go, whoa, it's a sort of like, let's do something about this. So I think that's something we could do.
Filling out the awful taking your avatar and showing you what it would look like in 5 years if you're eating sugar every single day.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, in addition to training, in addition to skills transference for surgeons, for nurses, for all healthcare practitioners, and also preparing patients, it sounds like it could perhaps be used for some preventative medicine as well.
Absolutely. I mean, and also the part of the spin-off of what we found out about training surgeons is that, so that we can also help doctors and nurses actually empathize with patients an awful lot more, because we can put them in the position of being the patient. And so that's a really good way of actually sort of saying to them, well, actually, this is what it feels like to be a patient. This is what it feels like. So you get your colleagues to come in and sort of tell you what's wrong with you or how they're going to treat you, and sort of how they can give you all the information that you need, but do it in a way which in actual fact is that the doctors and nurses are connecting with the patients, and not just doing it in a very clinical, very matter-of-fact way. That over here, that they're very keen on getting the medical staff to actually empathize with the patients, and also patients' families as well.
What about mental health? You touched briefly a few moments ago how virtual reality has been used kind of across the spectrum, from treating phobias to PTSD to serious disorders like schizophrenia, or bipolar, perhaps. Can we touch upon that aspect of this technology with regards to helping people medically?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a huge area. I mean, we've been experimenting a little bit with people with Alzheimer's and sort of degenerative diseases of the brain, and it looks as though it's starting to look quite promising, because the great thing about virtual reality and augmented reality to a large degree is that you can actually get people to feel things, as I say, without putting them in harm's way, or to, in actual fact, gently sort of lead them into doing the right thing rather than the wrong thing. I'll tell you a sort of specific thing that we've been sort of playing around with, and that was for Alzheimer's patients. And one of the problems when you have Alzheimer's is that you actually just forget what you've been doing, and it becomes increasingly difficult to remember. Did I switch off the oven? Did I take the kettle off the hob? And that type of thing, or did I just phone my daughter or not? And what we've been trying out for it in various things, and it's at very early stages yet, but with wearable devices, we can actually get those wearable devices to actually track what you're doing and say, well, no, actually, yes, it's simple. You have taken the kettle off the hob. You have unplugged the iron so it's not still on. And you did phone your daughter only a minute ago, so you don't need to phone her again. And so I think there are some really interesting things that you can do in that area. Also, the great thing about virtual reality in training and teaching is because it's such a sort of I want to use the word impactful. It actually makes a big difference if you do it correctly to how you teach people. It can actually touch people in a way which normal training just doesn't do, or normal teaching doesn't do. It takes you into something and immerses you into that idea. And I keep using the word immersive because that's the key thing to me in virtual reality, because that's the difference between watching something on a screen. You can, if it's done right, and we've done our job in creating the virtual reality in the first place, we've created something which becomes almost indistinguishable from the real thing. Now, of course, that you can do good things with that, but also have to be sort of quite careful about how far you can take that, because that again, when it's going to be, virtual reality is going to be a very powerful tool, and that could be, and with any powerful tools, you've got to be very careful about how far you take things and how far you use it. For instance, there's a debate starting up now about, sort of how old should you be before you actually sort of start experiencing virtual reality for a long period of time. And of course, exactly, I think people have got to be really, really aware about what you can do and the emotions that you can sort of get into people, because once you put the headset on, and we've done our job right, you're totally in a different reality, but you bought into that reality, and that reality can be a good reality, but also it could be a bad reality. So you've actually got to be very careful about how far you take things and what you do with people. A lot of our virtual reality work that we do is very structured in that you don't just sort of drop somebody into a situation. You sort of build up into a situation, then you actually sort of work your way through that, and then you sort of let them down gently as well before they take the headsets and the headphones off, because it can be, if you've been in virtual reality for over sort of about 3 or 4 minutes, your brain is believing that's real. And so when you take the headset off, it's in reality, but your brain's saying, well, I was in another reality and that seemed perfectly real to me. So you've got a sort of slightly conflicting thing going on with inside your head, which could be quite dangerous if it's not handled correctly. Now, of course, that can be done for good and it can be done for bad. It can be
double-edged sword.
Yeah, I say, well, it is, but it means that you can. I think we can do some fantastic things, especially in medicine and cognitive treatment. And I know that sort of one of the great things that I saw, and again, is very inspiring, was the work that they've been doing on burns victims, where they've been getting them to sort of experience virtual reality games in the Antarctic with penguins and throwing snowballs around and things like that. And it's absolutely fantastic. And I mean, because burns victims have one of the big problems they have is that they have to keep getting the bandages and sort of changed on a regular basis, and that's something that's incredibly painful to go through, and have to go through it again and again and again. And there's only so much pain relief that you can give somebody before it actually flatlines out and doesn't do anything again. But by using sort of virtual reality and actually getting people to believe they were doing something else, or they were somewhere else doing something else, their mind is totally distracted. And so it seems that all the initial sort of tests are saying that, in actual fact, that you've taken your mind off something which is hurting them, and actually taken it somewhere else. And if your brain isn't sort of registering the pain doesn't exist. So, and I think that's showing just the tip of the iceberg. Excuse the Antarctic joke, but it's a sort of like, it's just the tip of the iceberg about what you can do in the actual sort of medical realm, whether it's a sort of distraction techniques like that, or whether it's phobia techniques where you can actually sort of take somebody up in an airplane without taking them up in an airplane, or having a spider sort of wandering across their hands and things like that without actually it happening, but it would seem as though it were happening to them, but it wouldn't be dangerous. So there are lots of great things I think we can work on in that area, and something which really excites me as well.
Yeah, the example that you just cited, utilizing the virtual reality game called Snow World at the University of Washington to utilize it as pain reduction, as a distraction technique for burn victims, that was shown to have the same effectiveness as morphine. And it absolutely amazing. So we've been using this technology even for brain damage assessment and rehabilitation. This is being used in some places as indicators for mild cognitive impairment, which can be an early sign of Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
If we're using, even in places like USC is using this to treat PTSD for veterans returning from war. So is it possible to use this technology to actually train our brains? Our brains are so much more plastic than we have thought for a long time. And if we can use this to treat brains that are damaged in some way or have gone through some type of trauma, can we use this technology to actually mold our own brains, to train our own brains for enhanced cognition, perhaps? Can we create a super brain?
I think it's going to start to help, because I think you're absolutely right. Because it's the because the brain, again, if you put people in the right experience, their brain is going to believe that's a real experience. And just on the sort of teaching sort of note, great if, that if I was a student and I wanted to find out about what it was like to be in Rome 2,000 years ago, wouldn't it be fantastic if I could just sort of virtually transport myself there and actually look at it and feel it and hear it and be sort of engulfed by it. So I think it's got a lot of possibilities. It's got a lot of possibilities about training the brain, and an awful lot of possibilities about sort of repairing neural networks and things like that. We've done a little bit of work on phantom limbs as well, where people have lost arms or legs. And one of the worst things that can happen is that although the limb isn't there, you can still feel pain in it, or you can sort of for instance, the one of the things which I didn't realize could happen is that you could have lost an arm, but you could still, your mind still thinks it's there, and you can start to clench your fist up, and the fist starts clenching up, and because you can't see it, you can't control it. Your brain says half the way it's not there, half the way it is there. So in actual fact, if you can overlay a virtual limb inside your field of vision, whether that's using augmented reality or virtual reality, you can help people to see, when they see their hand in virtual reality, they can start to unclench it. And so that's something that, that I found that is just amazing. And if we can start to do things like that, that's why that one of my pet things, it is the sort of medical side, because I think this has something which we can offer of tremendous value in that area.
Absolutely. We have, is it Jaron?
It's Jaron Ray Hines.
Hi there.
Nice.
So
joined by Steve today.
Hi there.
What is it?
Thanks for popping in. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, sure. So what do you think of nanotechnology and cell repair and people extending their lives based on, artificial intelligence? Does that fit in line with virtual reality and augmented reality? Do we teach ourselves to live longer?
I think all of these emerging technologies are going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I don't think that virtual reality is necessarily a separate issue or a separate possibility for something like additive printing, 3D printing, synthetic biology, nanotechnology, cell repair. All of these things I think will absolutely be helping us. And I think they're going to be fusing a lot faster than perhaps we think right now. And I don't think there's a ton of mainstream recognition of the eventual morphing, perhaps, of these technologies. But I love that question. Yeah, there's a ton of possibilities. Absolutely. What do you think about that, Steve?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that all the things you mentioned, I think will actually sort of happen, and probably happen a lot quicker than we imagine. I think probably by 2050, a lot of the things you just talked about will be, if not mainstream, will certainly be available. Now, there's somebody told me a sort of story the other day about, and it was actually talking about space, about aliens, and about that if there was other civilizations somewhere in the universe. It could be that they're much more advanced than we are. If they're much more advanced than we are, why haven't they come and visited us rather than waiting for us to go and visit them? And one of the hypotheses is that they actually discovered virtual reality. And the idea being is that you can use virtual reality to travel anywhere you like and experience anything you like. So that they don't need to actually sort of travel over here, because they have actually sort of discovered what it's like virtually already. So they don't need to travel vast distances to do it. They can do it virtually. So I think that's actually sort of one side of what virtual reality.
So you brought up another point, and our company, we're actually in contract with some entities, you were talking about the psychological effects and training of, I'm going to use the example of somebody who's climbing a cell phone tower. And maybe we have a green room and we're using, I'm guessing you're using Oculus or Unity, Real Engine. I don't know. They're all the same to me. Do you see it becoming a huge part of the HR hiring training process? Like, do I test somebody to see if they have anxiety when they climb to 150 feet based on, the melon band being in the headband of the Oculus or one of these? How do you see the future of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think you can actually sort of test people and see if they suffer from vertigo or things like that, and whether it's possible to actually sort of help train them out of that. Interesting enough, that gets onto the sort of AR sort of idea, because I think with augmented reality headsets, then you'll be able to send people out to actually fix and mend things. And actually be able to be talked through by people back at base. It might be something that they haven't seen before. It might be something that they need to talk about. Actually, I did read somewhere that one of the biggest causes of death with linemen is, in actual fact, when they take their mobile phones out of their pockets to try and snap the actual, so what's wrong with the electricity line or how they fixed it, and they just forget what they're doing and actually sort of let go with both hands at the same time, and that's how they fall off. So with a head-mounted augmented reality display, you don't need to do that, because you could actually ask your glasses to take a picture of it, send it back to base, check
analysis.
Okay, yeah, and do the analysis.
My last question: where is the ethical boundaries between, hey, we have to wear a helmet on site, but since we are taking all these measurements from these sensors, where is the fine line legally of we're collecting this data, parsing it, analyzing it, and we know a lot about these people already, the human rights coming at us. What's your standpoint there?
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. I mean, I think this is sort of where sort of Google Glass started to, get into a situation which I didn't think they foresaw when they actually sort of brought them out. And yes, it is going to be a little bit like Big Brother, because you will be wearing something which can totally check up on not only what you're doing, but also how you are reacting as well. So I think it's, as with all things, it's going to have to be handled sensitively, and I think it's probably going to be sort of peer pressure and the sort of the way things work.
Peer pressure. I've had a smartwatch for 18 months. I've got 18 months of JSON data for my trying to extend my life. So I didn't feel peer pressure. I just want to live a little longer,
Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely. But some people could feel that, if you were forced to wear that, because of your job, and somebody said, no, you have to wear that because of your job, then that might be something else. You might want to push back and say, well, hang on a sec, no, I don't want to wear this. Or I want you to sort of switch it off at certain times. Do I really want?
Or the leather gives me irritation on my wrist.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is one of the problems with things like Fitbit and stuff like that. It's great, but when you're exercising and you're starting to perspire, that's actually sort of doing lots of difficult things with the wristbands or the watches as well. So but I think it's also, but you've hit on a very interesting point about, as with all these technologies now, it becomes very, very easy to actually extrapolate an awful lot of information about the wearer, but also not only about what they're seeing, but also about the wearer themselves. So that could be, something, as I say, that has to be handled sensitively, and it's not something that you can sort of jump into gung-ho and think it's going to be all right. We have to sort of think these things through logically and make sure that everybody does it properly and actually doesn't overstep the mark by actually sort of taking too much information about you.
Right. Cool.
Yeah, I thank you for the questions. I'm absolutely of the mind that this is a privacy concern, and this isn't, privacy concerns aren't new. You know what I mean? This is just kind of the next evolution of privacy concerns. We all have cell phones that we have to turn off the geofencing capability. We have to turn off the fact that we're actually being tracked location-wise by our cell phone. Everyone's on Facebook. How much data is being extrapolated from us by Facebook? Just to even open a Facebook Live account, they have you give the government ID. I kind of dropped it like a hot potato at that point, but and all of these wearables are collecting so much data on us, and especially when we go into the next evolution, perhaps, of wearables with headsets, we can track everything in headsets. So we can track how long you're looking at objects.
No, we have a company in Malibu that the headphones are measuring the EEG and whatever the other one is for happiness and sadness. So, at the end of your workout, there's a report available that says, hey, you were working out the hardest during DJ Tiesto at this peak beat, and here's the report, so we can fine tune this fitness workout. So there's a lot of ideas out there. Think Melon just got $2 million in LA. And I know we're we're in R&D right now with 2 different projects that you guys definitely nailed on this morning. So definitely impressed with your presentation, and I'll follow you guys, and we'll see if we can get in contact.
Great. Fantastic. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you for popping on. I appreciate that. Yeah. And it's always going back to I think it was originally Voltaire who said it, and it was kind of appropriated to Spider-Man, but with great power comes great responsibility. And this technology is enormous. The potentiality of this technology could be limitless. And with that power comes great responsibility. There's so many positive use cases that can come out of that. But right alongside those positive use cases are also privacy concerns. Yeah. There are a lot of other ethical concerns as well. And we're going to have to really hash that out as we go down this road, as we go along. And that's why, as humans, we're going to have to keep the dialogue on this technology very, very open.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting to note that actually over here in Europe, there's a lot of things that Facebook can't do and are blocked by the European Union from actually doing. So it's that everybody's sort of keeping a very sort of close eye on what's going on. And as you say, it's a sort of like, if it's all done for the right reasons, there should be no problem at all. But it only takes one rogue person that's actually going to try and take over something, or trying to extrapolate sort of data that you don't wish to be sort of taken out. I mean, it's the same thing about if you're wearing trackers for fitness and things like that, and what happens if that shows something up, with you have a heart problem or something like that, and your insurance company gets hold of that information. It's that could then be a big problem for you. It's something that we actually have to put lots of checks and balances in on these processes, I think.
Absolutely. Steve, thank you so much again for joining us here on the Real Virtual Show. Steve, where can we find you? Where should people go to find you on the interwebs, Steve Dann?
Great. Well, this is sort of like my Twitter handle is called Berwick Post. That's BERWICK POST. And my company name is Amplified Robot. So if you Google Amplified Robot, you can always find me. And also if you Google medical realities, then you can see what we're trying to do in the medical reality space.
Beautiful. Thank you again, Steve. I appreciate you coming on and dropping the knowledge bombs. Hope to talk to you again soon.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.